right, everybody, welcome to another episode here on Equity Guru. We are diving a little bit deeper than usual. We're talking about standard uranium. I am here with VP of Geology, Sean Hilliker. He is with Standard. He's been with Standard for quite a while, and he can tell us all about what is happening, what has already happened, and what is going to happen in the company. Just a quick intro into the company. Standard Uranium is in the Athabasca Basin, right? They're an exploration company. So their big mission is to go out there and find uranium. Sounds pretty simple. However, it is not simple. It is anything but simple. It's actually quite complicated. The areas are quite vast. There are only certain seasons where you can actually go out there and drill. And finding uranium is very difficult, but when you find it, it's usually such a high grade material that it is worth the years that you spent looking for it. So Standard Uranium has 5 different projects all around the Athabasca Basin, Sundog to the north, Davidson River to the southwest, if I'm not mistaken. I've never been there, but I've seen maps.
That's correct.
And then some other projects to the east of the basin. Now, Davidson River is, if I'm not mistaken, very close to NextGen and Fission's discoveries. So Sean, welcome. And please tell us, before we dive into what you guys have found and what you guys are still looking for, tell me about yourself. How did you end up working for Standard, and tell us a little bit of what you've done before, please.
Well, first, thanks for having me, Fabi. It's great to be here with the EQUITY.GURU crew. Yeah, sure. So a little bit of background for me. I've been a uranium geologist my entire career in the geoscience field. I'm a professional geoscientist with APEGS in Saskatchewan. I'm based in Saskatoon here. So I've been working in the Athabasca Basin my entire professional career. So I started my career off with NextGen Energy, like you mentioned. I came on to that exploration team immediately after the discovery hole at the Arrow deposit. So that was a really exciting time. A lot of, invaluable experience for me, being a young geologist fresh out of school and, being exposed to the highest grade uranium on the planet. So that was really fantastic for me to learn. The crew was relatively small when I started back in 2013, 2014. And we continued to build it out. We had 2 drills when I started. And by the time I left there in 2020, we were up to 10 drills. So, things can happen really quickly. Like you said, when you get onto something exciting, things progress quickly, and the Athabasca Basin is a great place to be. So I worked my way up from a junior geologist, logging drill core, learning how everything works up there, the gamma probes, how drills work themselves, and just really what it takes to be part of a strong exploration team. So that was great. I got the chance to work with a lot of really good mentors. And then not only that, but I continued to do my master's on the Arrow deposit. So as we continued to drill it, and this thing kept growing and growing into a world-class deposit that it is today, it was, really fortunate for me to be able to really dig into the rocks, look at the structural controls on the mineralization, because Arrow is a little bit different than your classic east side Athabasca style unconformity related uranium deposit. So it's all hosted within the basement rocks underneath the sandstone. And it's really interesting. It's similar to how an orogenic gold deposit works, but different fluids, different chemistry, and lo and behold, uranium. So it was really great for me to spend the time, 2 years doing my master's, working full time while I was doing it on the deposit. So, my mind was never far away from the subject and far away from the rocks. So, it was great experience, learned a lot, and really set the stage for me to progress in my career and get where I am today. So I worked at NextGen for 5 solid years up till 2020. We took it, from discovery right up to feasibility. So that was some of the last things I was working on, was modeling the deposit and the geology in 3D, understanding what's controlling the uranium, and looking at the rock types very specifically, the chemistry, looking at how old the uranium was, and then, contributing to the feasibility study, environmental impact statement, and all of those good things. So really great for me to learn, not just the rocks, but how to take something from discovery to the next step and into the development phase before we go find the next one. So after that, did a short stint with Appia Energy, uranium and rare earth element focused company. They have a really good project called Alsace Lake up actually just north of our Sundog project by Uranium City. It's up north of there, some really high grade rare earth elements up there. So that was a good experience as well. And then I got a phone call from one of my previous mentors, Garrett Ainsworth. He came over, joined the board of directors for Standard, and he heard that I was gone from NextGen and told our CEO, John Bay, hey, you gotta give this guy a call and scoop him up. So they did. They called me out of the blue, offered me a job essentially. So I came over in 2020 as the project geologist at Standard Uranium. We ran our very first program. So we just went public in May of 2020, just doing geophysics kind of leading up to that year. So that was our very first program as a public company. First time we ever drilled the project. Davidson River had never been drilled for uranium ever, which is really cool. There was like 2 drill holes, I think, for oil and gas back in the day on the project. So really interesting to dig into the geology. And like you said, it's right across the street from NextGen. It's a long trend. And so that's my stomping ground, right? That's where I cut my teeth in uranium. I know the rocks as good as anyone in that area. So, it made sense for the company to give me a call, and I was really excited to come join the team and help build out the team. So here we are a couple years later. We've done 4 drill programs on Davidson River. We've done 1 on Sundog. And then, we've amassed a team of young and hungry and talented geologists internally at Standard Uranium. So it's great to have a team now, and we keep building on that, driving the company forward and trying to make that next big discovery. So that kind of brings us to now, and that's where I came from.
That's cool. I can only imagine that going pretty much straight out of school into NextGen must be akin to being in finance and like going to Goldman Sachs, right? It's like, oh, here it is. Here's your first job. And by the way, it is, the world's single best discovery in uranium. So I'm sure that experience kind of put you in the whole whirlwind of, capital markets plus, geology plus how to run a drilling campaign, which is something very different to just studying the rocks, I'm sure. And so here we are, years later at Standard. What do we have asset-wise, and what's different about the different projects?
Great question. So as you mentioned, Fabi, we have 5 different projects right now in our land holdings, all in Saskatchewan, all around the Athabasca Basin. And we actually have a really nice spread of projects around the basin, like you mentioned. So we have our flagship Davidson River that we were talking about. That's down just outside the edge of the basin in the southwest corner. It's about 25 kilometers straight west of NextGen and Fission. There's several conductors that, we'll talk about that later, that host those, world-class discoveries that have been made in the last decade. And we're right along trend from that. So that's why it's our flagship. The blue sky and potential on that project is massive. So that's why we like it so much. And then we have 4 different tertiary projects. So one called Sundog up by Uranium City. It's just south of Uranium City. We're in good company up there with some other companies doing work and kind of breathing new life into that area as well. That was actually Canada's very first uranium mining camp. And, Yellowcake was produced there up until the early 80s. So it's kind of been, shut down since then. So it's nice to get up there. And a lot of the locals are really happy to see us up there, bringing some money into the area and creating jobs and that kind of thing too. So it's really beautiful up there. I can't stress that enough. It's like a miniature version of BC. There's actually rock outcrop out there. It's absolutely gorgeous. And that project is really unique as well because we actually do have rocks at surface. So anywhere else in the basin that you go, usually we're looking under what we call overburden. So basically the uranium is buried under a whole bunch of sandstone and other stuff on top. So those are what we call blind deposits. And it's a little bit more challenging to look through all that stuff. We use geophysics to do that, and then drill it out and hope you hit, right? So Sundog is great that way because we actually have high grade uranium right at surface that we can see. So that makes it unique in that way. So it's great to be able to get up there, as a geo, and bring your compass and actually walk on the rocks and look at them. And you can see, these faults and different structures controlling the mineralization right at surface. And we can use that knowledge to help us target the drills to hopefully find, the mother lode that might lie beneath, right? So that's Sundog. We're getting up there very shortly again. And then we have 3 different projects on the east side of the basin. They're called Atlantic, Canary, and Ascent. Atlantic is really close to ISO Energy's Hurricane deposit, their Rock East project. So that's just to the west a little bit and the north of that. And then our other projects, Canary, kind of lies in the middle, just to the northwest of that, still inside the basin, relatively shallow depths to our targets there as well, which is good. And then Ascent lies actually right on the edge of the basin. So half of the project is inside the basin and half of the project is outside, kind of like Davidson. So we haven't actually drilled those projects yet. There's some historical uranium showings and some really interesting other geology and pathfinder things going on those projects. So we're really excited to get over there and get some drills into the ground. And we actually just did some work on those projects for the first time. We staked those, so they're all 100% owned, same with Sundog, in 2020. And then COVID relief kind of pushed those forward. So we had to do some work this year. So we ran some geophysical surveys on all 3 of those projects to get them drill ready. And we've had some really exciting results come back from those. I'm really excited to share those with you and the public and the market. So to stay tuned for some news on that early in the new year. And we're actually just working on identifying all of our drill targets for the east side projects right now. So very exciting.
That is super exciting. I didn't know that you had news coming so soon. Let's talk about Davidson River, because the location is intriguing to say the least, but I'm speaking from purely a map fact, right? If something is close to something interesting, it makes that interesting as well. Geologically, let's learn a little bit more about why Davidson River it seems so prospective and what you guys have found so far.
Sounds great. So, like you said, closeology is a thing. Lots of companies will come in and you have a producing mine or something very interesting or a very good deposit, and you'll come in and you'll stake land right next to it, and they'll plant their flag and be like, look, we're right next to this, invest in us or something. But that's the big thing that I always try to stress to investors and just to anyone following us, is that Davidson isn't just an area play. It's not just closeology. So like you mentioned, the geoscience and the geology is there that make it interesting. And that's the big kicker for Davidson River. There's actually a nice figure that we can pull up here talking about what we call our Clearwater domain mirror theory. So there's the Clearwater domain, just simply speaking, is this big feature that you can see in magnetics. It's a big geological feature. It's essentially an intrusion. So if you think of hot magma kind of coming up from deep into the ground, that's essentially what it is. So it's a bunch of these intrusive lava derived rock types, and they essentially split, this feature splits these different trends that host Arrow, Triple R, and these other world-class deposits up from ours. So these trends actually come down from the northeast and then curve and fold up to the northwest right through our project. So the Clearwater domain is important just because there's some new research actually by the Geological Survey of Canada coming out that is speculating that this feature helped drive the heat and fluids and could possibly be an actual source of the uranium in the area. So that's kind of just, from a source standpoint, where did the uranium come from? Why are these deposits here? Mineral deposits are essentially Mother Nature's mistakes. There should never be that much metal concentrated, in one spot. Earth and, nature likes to be homogeneous. Things like to be, evenly spread out. So you have to have a certain, type of conditions for this to happen. And it's like, whoops, here you go. Here's, 300 million pounds of uranium. So that's what we're looking for. And this area is a great area to find that. So the Clearwater domain is, part of that story. So that's a great thing. That's kind of number one. And then not only that, but like I said, these trends that host the uranium actually do fold up right through our property. So there's a big regional scale structure. If you think back in time, rocks are all soft and plastic when they're buried. We talk about folds and that kind of thing. So you have big tectonic stress and the rocks actually just bend and fold. So that's what we're seeing in the area. You can clearly see that on some of these regional scale maps and things. And then we talk about conductors a lot. So conductors are simply just rock packages that have graphite or some sort of mineral in them that is conductive. So sulfide minerals like pyrite, fool's gold, those types of things create a conductive response as well. And often we see graphite and sulfides kind of together in these trends, and those create the conductors. So when we're looking for Athabasca Basin style uranium, that's often the starting point. Like I said, these deposits are buried under all of this stuff. So we have to look at geophysical surveys and kind of define these corridors where we know that uranium will likely be focused. So that's kind of the starting point. That's what we did in 2018, 2019. And then after that, you essentially start drilling. The only way to find a deposit is with the drill bit, and exploring with the drill bit, is the most exciting part. So that's what we're doing now. So these conductors, again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds with you here, Fabi, but they're important
please
for
get into the weeds because I'm enjoying this.
Perfect,
Like you explained this much better than most geologists. So let's get into it.
Okay, sounds good. So the conductors, they're important for a few different reasons. Number one, they're important from a physical or like rock property standpoint. So if you imagine, graphite in your pencil lead or something like that, it's really soft, right? And then you have other rocks around these conductors that are full of quartz or other minerals that are really hard. So you have immediately just a competency contrast, or rheological contrast is the scientific word, but you have something really soft next to something really hard. And when you put pressure on those rocks, it's going to deform and move along the soft bit, right? So that's why these are, these conductors, these corridors are essentially your fluid highway. So they deform, they move, they open up and create accommodation space for uranium bearing fluids to come in and interact with the rocks there, change the rocks. That's what we talk about, alteration, all the time. So just simply meaning the rock has been changed. And then, so these are all signs that, we're getting close to something. And that's kind of the physical, control on uranium that these conductors provide. So other than that,
is that something that you have found at Davidson River then? And please tell
absolutely.
me about the different areas, because I know you have, I think, Thunderbird and Bronco. Can you tell me which sort of areas are most exciting and how what you've just explained overlaps with what you found so far?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. These conductors don't necessarily always have graphite in them. They can have, like I said, there's a lot of different minerals that can be conductive. So that was kind of the goal of our first drill program in 2020 was, are we seeing the same basement rock types that we saw at Arrow on Davidson River? Are we seeing, let's drill these conductors and see, are they actually these graphite rich structures that we're looking for? And the answer is yes. So we proved that out in the first program. Same style of basement rocks. We're in the same geological domain. And then we're drilling these conductors and they are pumped full of graphite and sulfide minerals. But they are really soft, really deformed. And that's what we're looking for. Basically, the more messed up the rock looks, the better. So that's a really good sign. So you mentioned Thunderbird, you mentioned Bronco. There's also the Warrior Trend and Saint as well. So 4 main conductors on the property, and we've drill tested them all a little bit, but these things are tens of kilometers long. So you think about a drill hole that's 3 inches wide. It's a bit of a needle in a haystack type of deal. So in order to properly spend money and target your drill, effectively, there's some other criteria that you line up on top of just drilling the conductor. It's not just, close your eyes and poke holes in the conductor and hope for the best. So there's a lot of other things that we look at that, where these conductors break, where they change direction. There's a whole bunch of other things we look for that make a good drill target. And so we've been drilling these things and prioritizing our drill targets. And so the south end of Bronco looks super good. There's really good graphitic structure there that, are 5 to 10 meters wide. Like, you think about the scale of that underground, it's pretty impressive. And not only that, but we're seeing multiple kind of intervals of them. So you have one shear zone that's full of graphite and then another one below it. So they're kind of stacked. And that's exactly what we saw at Arrow. That's the exact same type of geometry that hosts the Arrow deposit. So there's stacked shear zones, and in between and within them, you have massive blowouts where there's high-grade uranium. So that's kind of the starting point. We're seeing that on Bronco, southern portion of Warrior as well. Lots of really good alteration. Like I said, those rocks being changed by the right types of fluids that we're looking for. We'll talk more about that in a second. And then Thunderbird, we just tested for the first time this past summer in 2022. Again, saw some really prospective structure and more alteration that we're looking for. So lots of really good signs that we're in the right style of rocks. We're seeing the right styles of structures. And now we just use that information to help us vector in. And then there's the whole geochemistry part of it as well, that I'm sure you'll want to talk about as well. So,
well, then let's get into it. How does geochemistry play into that and your decision to drill? Because as you just mentioned, Sean, I do not envy geos who have to go out in the field and break up rocks and then go back into the office and look at a bunch of different things and do all these different types of studies. And I guess grab different information from all of them and make the decision of X marks the spot, right? And as you said yourself, the drill bit is very, very small compared to the massive area and the massive potential that could be there. How do you use geochemistry in order to help you make that decision? Or does it get even more confusing the more you have?
I mean, maybe more confusing isn't the right phrase, but it's actually super helpful because, the things aren't mutually exclusive, right? If you have a really good looking shear zone, that doesn't necessarily mean uranium. You need those right types of fluids. So uranium actually travels dissolved in what we call a hydrothermal fluid. So that simply means just a really hot water, essentially, that's under pressure because it's deep in the Earth's crust. So that's a hydrothermal fluid. This is where, most of your ore deposits come from. You have metal, uranium, gold, copper, whatever is dissolved in this hydrothermal fluid, this hot water. And then some sort of chemical reaction happens, and that metal will combine with oxygen or whatever and drop out of that fluid as a mineral. And then that's your ore deposit, right? So uranium's floating around in a certain type of fluid system. And, this is still a topic of contention among uranium geologists in the Athabasca Basin, whether or not the graphite actually causes that reaction, or is it the sulfides, or is it something else in the rock? Is it silicification? There's a lot of different kind of ideas and camps of thought that argue constantly about what's the most important. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how uranium works. It's the metal, regardless of what type of fluid it is. It's the main theory is that it's oxidized, so just meaning it's dissolved in their oxidized fluid system that comes through, interacts with graphite or sulfides, or take your pick, but that acts as a reductant. So if you think back to kind of high school chemistry, oxidation reduction reactions, that's basically it. So it's a redox reaction, and that oxidized fluid interacts with the rocks, and then the uranium precipitates out of that fluid as uraninite, pitch blende, whatever uranium mineral you choose. So that's the really important chemistry kind of standpoint of it. And these fluids are pretty nasty. Lots of times they're pretty acidic and that type of thing. Like I said, they alter the rock, they change the rock, and basically turn it into mush, clay alteration. So you have clay minerals that are really soft. That's a really indicative, and common alteration around uranium deposits. So we talk about halos. So, you have your uranium deposit, and then, kind of in a balloon around that, you have this area where the rock has been changed and altered. So that's your alteration halo. And there's certain types of alteration, certain minerals, certain chemistry that we know is associated with these deposits. So those are things we look for in the geochemistry. So we sample our drill holes, obviously. We cut them in half, we keep half to look at later, and then we send the other half to the lab. They grind it up, they run it through their, mass spectrometer and tell us what the physical makeup according to the periodic table is in that rock. So you have every element on the periodic table that you can think of. You have a value for each of those. And as geos, we know, which elements make up which minerals. So I'll use a common example that a lot of people talk about is boron. So boron is an element that's really common in a mineral called dravite. So dravite, we know, is a really important pathfinder mineral for uranium in the Athabasca Basin. Almost every high-grade uranium deposit in the basin has a dravite halo associated with it. Not all of them do, but you don't usually find dravite just hanging out by itself, right? This is a pretty indicative thing that you're in the right type of system, the right type of fluids have come through and changed that rock. So those are all things we look for. And you've heard me, I'm sure, talk about pathfinder elements. So essentially, it's just a group of these elements, 8 to 10 of these different elements that we know are associated with uranium fluids or uranium alteration. All of these things that give us a sign that we're in the right area, right? And so we get these values back from all of our samples, and then we can do all sorts of statistical analysis, look at where is the boron, elevated? Do we have a boron anomaly here? Just keeping with that example. So we can actually model that all in 3D, and where we, model our rocks. So we have this really pretty 3D volume of, the earth that, and that helps us plan our drill holes. So we can look at where these elements are elevated or anomalous, just being way above background kind of thing. And for each different element, we have different cutoffs. Okay, what's anomalous, what's not. We know what that kind of baseline is based on the rock type we're in. So we can really effectively look at where things are elevated or interesting, and then pair that with where do the structures look best. And then that is where our focus will be. So it's not just not just looking at uranium, but there's this whole suite that we know are buddies with uranium. So that's where we want to focus our efforts. Sorry if that was a bit rambling.
That makes a heck of a lot of difference for the average investor to understand versus reading a news release doesn't have, a massive 50% or some ridiculous number uranium over, I don't know, 100 meters, right? Because I think sometimes the expectation of the investor is that we're going to find a piece of land. It's going to be in the magical Athabasca Basin, and first drill holes are going to come out with, uranium, processed uranium. Why not? Since we're in fairyland, then let's wish for whatever we want, right? And the process of trying to narrow things down and trying to overlay different pieces of information to get to the drilling, and then eventually, hopefully, get to something that's then possibly economically viable, right? So there are many steps to it. So you have collected some of the information there, especially with Davidson River, your flagship. What's next for both Davidson River and the other projects?
Sounds good. So like I said, we've had some really encouraging results on Davidson. We're more excited about it now than we ever have been. Every drill program we've gone through, like you said, if a lot of people look at your results and it's pretty hard to digest. I mean, I do my best to summarize it and put it out in a way that people can take away the key points from it. But the key takeaways are we're seeing things that we want to see. We are seeing these elevated pathfinder elements. We got the right rocks, we got the right structures, and every time we go back, we're drilling better and better looking stuff. That's the big takeaway. So as we've continued to use our previous results to vector in and refine our drill targets, we keep going back and drilling, and we're seeing better stuff. So we're really confident that we have all the right ingredients there, and now it's just a matter of keeping the drill spinning and keep using that information, keep adjusting our strategy, and trying to vector into that deposit. If it's there, Fabi, we're going to find it. We can't put uranium in the ground, but we know how to find it. So that's what we're trying to do. And for Sundog too, it's a really exciting project. Like we said, we have high grade uranium right at surface. It's not as easy as drawing a line from point A to point B and being like, oh yeah, let's drill here, and then boom, you hit it. I mean, that's kind of essentially what we're doing. But like I said, we can't put it there, and these things are a little bit more complicated than that. So we're really excited to get back to Sundog in 2023. That's going to be our first drill program of 2023. It makes perfect logistical sense to get up to Sundog first. We can get up there, do a drill program, for much cheaper in the winter, because we can drive right in with an ice road rather than using a helicopter or something like that, which is obviously very expensive. So that's what we're planning to do to kick off 2023. We have some phenomenal drill targets already picked. We were just looking at some yesterday. I'm really, really itching to get up there. And so that should be a really good start to the year of discovery, we're calling it, in 2023. We're going to get up there early February and drill through March. We had just one drill up there this year, in 2022. And so we're going to bring 2 drills up and hit it hard, double what we did last year, without doubling the cost, which is great. There's a lot of synergies you can do with that. So we're really
okay. I got to stop you there. How do you double how much you're going to drill without doubling the cost? Please make it make sense.
Great question. Okay, so running a drill program is very complicated. There's a lot of moving pieces. Obviously, you got your drill contractor, you got, you're dealing with ice roads or helicopters, medical staff, cook staff, the camp, all of your people, everything like that. So when you're getting up there and you're like, okay, we're going to go drill this project, all of those costs to get up there, your mobilization costs to get out, your demobilization costs, those are all essentially fixed. So when you're already bringing everybody up there, adding one more drill and one more drill crew of 4 people is not a massive cost on top of that. And you can actually piggyback, in the instance with the heli program, you can do 2 drills and your helicopter is just kind of bouncing between both of them, which would be flying anyway, or whatever. So you can add another drill for a small fraction of the overall cost. And then when you're drilling, your production goes way faster because you're drilling twice as much at the same amount of time. So you can actually get done what you want to do. So you want to drill 4,000 meters or something, you can get there way quicker. So that shortens your time span a bit. And so you're not paying for the camp as long, the people as long, as much food, everything else, right? So it's maybe adding a third of the cost, not even, to pop another drill in there. So hopefully that makes sense.
That makes sense. That makes complete sense. Yes. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, way more bang for your buck to get up there with 2 than just 1. So this last program we did in 2022 was very reconnaissance scale. We had never been up there and drilled it before since we staked the property. We ran some geophysics, got some great targets. And then basically we wanted to get up there and be like, okay, can we pull this off? Can we figure out all the logistics? It was a new camp, new people, new drill contractor, and, everything went super well. And we learned a lot on how to make it better, how to spend those dollars more effectively, and just make things better for everyone. So we're really geared up to get up there in the winter of 2023 in February and get the drills spinning. Everything is lined up. We're about to go sign an agreement with our First Nations partners up there. That there's all these back end things that a company needs to do to be able to operate that a lot of people don't really know about. There's a lot of new people coming in and being like, look, we got a piece of land in the magical Athabasca Basin, like you said, so we're going to go drill it, give us money. It's like, well, do you actually know that there's all this stuff that you have to do? Like it's, so it's a really interesting game that we play. It's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of really awesome people, and yeah, so we're excited to get out
Yeah.
there.
Some of the stuff you actually find out when it goes wrong, right? For example,
Oh
you're
yeah,
saying that you're about to get your agreement set up with your First Nations partners. If you don't get that
yeah,
part right, then guess what? It does not matter what you have in the ground. You don't have
exactly.
anything in the ground. So that's very important to highlight.
Yeah,
So we have Sundog in the winter. Then what?
yep. Then we're, like I said, we have some great targets. We're anticipating having a really good program up there at Sundog. And then so on the back of that, we're going to be looking at raising some more money. So you can stay tuned for that. And then we're hoping, we have drill programs planned on 2 of our east side projects as well, probably Atlantic and Canary. Like I said, we're still looking at all of our targets and the geophysics and some new work that we're doing to help us really vector into where we want to start on those projects. So essentially what our plan is we're going to start up by Uranium City at Sundog and do a big loop around the basin and drill, 4 of our projects at least, I hope. If obviously if the market supports it, who knows what'll happen. It's been kind of volatile as all get out recently. So
Volatile is the right word, and then not
yeah,
to
yeah.
use the
So
actual accurate word, crappy, right?
yeah. Okay, yeah, you said it. That's all good. So yeah, that's the plan. We're hoping to get up there and drill a couple of our east side projects for the first time. Like I said, there's some historical showings there as well. I think that we can get up there and drill some of these phenomenal targets that we have and have some success there too this year. So I'm really excited to try and go do that. And then on the back of that, we're going to drag the drills back down to Davidson River. So the east side program will be, again, like relatively reconnaissance scale. We have the 2 drills that we have at Sundog. We're going to bring those down, hopefully put 1 drill on 2 of the different projects, and then drill a couple holes, just kind of test the waters, do some ground truthing, and see what a program looks like. Like I said, we've never run one out of there before, but we have everything lined up to do it. So that's really good. And then after that, we're back to Davidson. That'll be, sorry, the east side will be probably April, May, a couple weeks after Sundog wraps up. And then a couple weeks after that, we'll fire up Davidson. So probably early June for Davidson, and then we'll drill, through to the fall on Davidson. So we're hoping to raise some capital and do our biggest drill program on Davidson to date. We have a ton of really good targets, and we've been working with Gold Spot Discoveries as well. We're the first and only uranium company that they've been working with on that. So what they are is kind of a machine learning, artificial intelligence company. They have a really, a crack team of geoscientists and geophysicists and, computer gurus. And so they've come up with all of these different algorithms and really cool technology that you can kind of layer on top of all the layers that we were talking about. So as a geo, my mind can process a finite amount of this information at once to be like, okay, that's a good drill target. So what they're doing is taking what we have, looking at other deposits in the area, like Arrow, like Triple R, and doing some anomaly matching and running these algorithms on like, okay, where in like deep in the data, where does the data line up to what Arrow looks like, what Triple R looks like? Do we have anything that looks like that on Davidson? Spoiler alert, yes, we do. So we're really excited to integrate that as well, and we'll probably put some stuff up on that before we start drilling as well. But it's really exciting to get back there to Davidson. We have some really interesting targets that have come out of this work with Gold Spot. They've done a great job, and they're going to be working on Sundog and our east side projects as well. So that'll be some new information coming over onto the plate in January here, and really excited for a big year. It's gonna be busy, and it's gonna be fun.
You are going to be a busy, busy man, I am sure. Sean, thank you so much really interesting story, still developing. If
Yeah.
people were trying to, ascertain whether they should, just put a part of their portfolio to work in something that could have, massive upside, as we like to say in the mining world, then
Yep.
obviously Standard would fit the bill for a lot of those items that we look for, right? We look for early stage, we look for a price that's good compared to historical, but then we also look at what do they have, what's the
Yeah.
team, what's the experience that they have on board as well. So lots of boxes
Exactly.
being ticked there. I'm very, very excited to just tell everybody, if you haven't looked at this company, go and check it out.
Check this out.
We are biased, but go check it out because it's worth
Oh,
learning at the very least. Just learn about it and then make your own decision.
absolutely. And, we try and help with that too, where, we try and hold our transparency to the highest standard possible. Me and John do a ton of videos. I believe the idea kind of came from John Quakes, actually, on our first program. He was like, oh, you guys should put out a little video or something from the drill program. We're like, hey, that's a good idea. So then we just, we started doing that and had really good feedback. People were like, oh, I didn't even know what a drill looked like. I don't like, so we're doing
That's
these
it.
started doing little 2-minute TED Talk things in the field to bring the investor to the drill program. Be like, look, this is what we're spending your money on. Look, we're drilling. This is how the drill works. This is what it looks like. This is a gamma probe. This is the scintillometer, right? This is how we look at radioactivity. Like,
And
look
let
at
me
us.
just
Look what
tell you,
we're doing.
you guys are like the only ones in the uranium space, if not almost all of the mining space, that are doing that have been doing that for quite some time. And I would encourage anybody who's interested in learning about it to just go on YouTube, and go to Standard Uranium's YouTube channel. It's really, really good, really educational. And also go to their Twitter, follow them on Twitter, follow them on YouTube. And John Bay is a buddy of mine, really, really cool guy. And, just approach him with your question, and he's a super open guy, and he'll answer anything that is not material, obviously, right?
Yes, yes, and likewise, like we're always here. We love to get the questions. We love to answer them, and maybe ask us a question, and we'll throw the answer in a little video, and then you can see it. Right? It's
That's cool.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. We have fun with it. We're a young and happy group of people here, and we're doing our best to find the next discovery, and we're having fun doing it, and we love the interaction with the public market and our investors, and that's we want to bring you along for the ride, so let's go.
What other public company is willing to reply you with a video, guys? I will tell you, none. Okay, straight up. Thank you so much, Sean. Best of luck with the programs, plural, that are starting very, very soon, and all the news that are definitely going to come out of them. Thank you. That's Sean Hilliker from Standard Uranium.
Thanks, Fabi.